Hey guys, Daniel Faust coming from my boardroom of a sense before I go over and go home to my living room and wanted to come live and do a live a little bit differently. So no matter where you're listening from Facebook or YouTube or Twitch and whatnot, I wanted to go over and do it a little different. So no banners this time and no fancy green screens, at least for today. But wanted to go over and talk to you about a topic of creating a great story in the boardroom. Have you ever gone over and been in the boardroom and not connected? Because we think we're normally looking for things like money, we're looking for power, we're looking for fame. Maybe we think that we're all capitalistic and we're just trying to climb the success ladder. We're honestly not. We do that as a mask that we put on in that particular regard. But when you go look at research and you go look at surveys and you go look at data and you go start talking to people, doesn't matter if they're military, doesn't matter if they're veteran, first responder, or even a civilian, most of us do not go over and do that. We think we create a great story by money, power, and fame, but we typically don't. When I read on the surveys and did some research today, I was astounded to hear, and I'm using my sticky for notes, so I'm kind of using banners, but not really, that 70% of friendships at work are actually crucial for people to go over and be happy. 70%. Not just going over and working from home. Working from home is awesome, but we still need to go over and have those relationships. In men, specifically, 55% of men, if they had great relationships, they wouldn't even go over and upwards go to a new job, And I thought to myself, I'm like, I would want to make more money. But then if I think about it, the current job I'm in right now, as I'm transitioning to get to Legrity Media full time, and that's why we broadcast out here, is that I with my coworkers right now, I do really get along with them. And if it wasn't other things to serve you guys, I probably wouldn't leave in that particular regard because I could see the undue stresses and the undue relationships that I could walk into in a higher promotion in the unknowns. So how do you make a great story at work when we're desperate for relationships and we want to stay connected, but we go over and it's difficult and it's hard and it can be really frustrating sometimes, but we deeply long for those relationships because we're averaging 50 to 60 hours a week. So on average, if a person's averaging 50 hours a week, doing working 50 weeks for 40 years in retirement, that's 100,000 hours. So how do we go take those 100,000 hours and make them meaningful while still balancing the living room and the bedroom and having those great stories from bedroom to boardroom? So if you haven't watched, go look at the episodes last week for the ones in the living room and in the bedroom. But we're going to talk about the boardroom. And again, I'm doing a little different. I don't have banners this time, so you're actually going to have to pay attention or use the auto caption later on to go check this on Facebook if that's where you're watching it, or YouTube. So I read some polls, did some research, did some suggestions and whatnot, and I will go over and put it in the feed where I got it from at the end. But I saw this as great strategies to start building those friendships and relationships. And I brought a little to my own and from my experience. So number one, look, listen, and feel for the culture, especially if you're starting out. There is 40% of Americans right now going over and potentially leaving, wanting to go back to the work from home or changing their position. And let's say you're one of those people. The first couple weeks to a month, you really need to look, listen, and feel for the culture to go over and to connect, because you don't want to be too forceful like what I'm typically am or be too reserved in that particular thing. So you should be observing in that time so you can go over and build those relationships. So that's number one. Number two, where most people go over and get mad at, is greetings, saying good morning and saying good afternoon or saying good evening. A lot of people want that greeting to connect in that initial part of the relationship. It's the opening of the conversation. How are you going to project yourself in that conversation? How are you going to be represented? You don't have to be here cheering and be like, yeah, good morning, yeah. You don't have to be the super creepy dude or a girl to go over and to do that. But the thing of the matter is, it's a greeting in the morning. That builds that reciprocation. I remember reading Dr. Gary Chapman's love language book, and one of the ladies that were married, and she was married for like 35, 40 years, wanted quality time. and all she wanted is 20 minutes a day. Sometimes at work, it's just the greeting that's going to be opening the door for you to build those relationships. So greeting people and then also greeting them when you're leaving. That's number two. Number three, this one's weird for me, but this is how most people connect is helping out. I do help out, but if you really want to connect in that place is going over and helping people out with a project or an assignment, or maybe through a tough time conversation, or maybe even just getting rid of the trash, or going over and maybe shredding some paper and whatnot, taking those few minutes to go over and do that. When you go over and you do that, it can open up the door for a connection really huge by helping out. So maybe it's getting rid of someone's trash, or going asking them to help them out with a certain project, especially if you're new. That that new time is the most amount of time you're going to have the most flex time, especially if you're military and you just PCSed in, or you're going into the new job, because a lot of us, again, 40% of Americans are going over and making that transition. It is huge. So definitely leverage that on helping out in those early stages to go build those relationships and to build those battle rhythms and to build those connections that you want to have in there. Number four, get out of your front of your desk, actually leave, actually get up and go over and walk over to a location and go over and connect to people. Phone is great, of course. Yes, video calls. Yes, you can go and do audio chats. Yes, you can do text messages and everything else. But getting up and doing that face to face, you got to weigh COVID and everything else and whatnot, and where your health is and everything else. And you can do it digitally by going do digitally, get away from your desk and going on and connecting with another person, going maybe doing a Zoom call on that particular guard outside of what do you need? I'm actually trying to connect with you. I'd like to go over and to build a relationship, or ask them how the day is and the weather. Yeah, you might have to start with those pleasantries and whatnot, but you can being a little awkward at first is going to go over and grow the relationship. So get out from your desk, even if it's virtually from the Excel or the data or the programs that you're going over and managing. Get out from there, maybe do a video call, or maybe do an audio call, or go over and walk to their desk, or take a drive out to go over and do that. You actually get more productivity done when you're going through those lulls anyway, because the average distraction takes you 17 minutes to go over and re-engage. So you might as well take that whole 17 minutes to go intergage with those people and then be more focused, because you could be just sitting at the computer, and if you got distracted, you're going to be doing nothing, or it's going to take you a while to get that momentum back anyway. So you might as well leverage it to get out from your desk and go over and connect virtually or in person. Next one is praising people when they go over and help you in that particular regard. That's really huge. A lot of people, the sweet sensitive style people, doesn't matter, guy or girl, that if they're looking for praise, and it doesn't have to be public praise in the sense that you have to announce it to the rooftops, but individually, hey, thank you for going over and helping me. That opens up the gateway to go over and to build those friendships, because they see you're sincere, they see you're real, they see you're authentic. They go over and see just a side instead of just being a task. So each time that someone's helping you in that particular regard, thank them. Go over and praise them. Hey, I'm really appreciative of you going over and helping with this. And that might open up the door for the conversations and the friendships that you're wanting to go over and develop. Next one is match the humor. You can't just go over and bring your humor to the scenario until you know. So when we talked about look, listen, and feel the culture, some humor is more brash, some humor is more dry, some humor is more subtle, some more humor is that. So you want to match the humor of what your office space and your coworkers are going over and bringing. When we bring our own humor instead of looking at their humor, or if you try to ratchet it up really high or ratchet it really low, it usually doesn't go over and work very well. It could be misunderstood. So you want to match the humor. You might, again, the first 30 days is a good time to go over and evaluate and see and listen a little bit. When you're getting auditorily distracted, or the mind goes low, or you start getting hungry, or you get distracted from a phone call, maybe take that time to maybe audibly listen, or to go be, a virtual bug on an ear in a sense, and listening to those different things. Is it a dry humor type environment? Is it really sarcastic type environment? Is it really a really expressive humor and whatnot, and match that humor. Obviously, you don't want to go humor that's, bad in the sense of equal opportunity stuff, but in general, match the humor to go over and to connect. This one is huge for me. I tend to forget this all the time, and especially as military members, it's especially when transitioning out because we're used to doing this. Don't be the negative and don't bring the negative. It's already exhausting as is, and we think that because it's sarcastic and braggadocious, we sometimes even think it's like it's good humor in that regard, but it's draining. People might entertain the negative and even relate to where you're at, but trying to be more positive in that regard. We have this thing called a mouth, and no matter if the mouth is being used in the sense of audibly talking or going over and then we're thinking it and then we use our fingers as an extension of that, the negative is getting exhausting as a culture. So sometimes we need to filter that through. Find those safe people that you can be quote unquote negative for a moment. But if you're negative on a regular basis, it's not going to be recharging. It's not going to be edifying. People might condone it. Sometimes they might get into a mood of it. You might find that negative person, guy or girl, that's in that realm. But the long story short, if you're negative on a regular basis, and it's not constructive criticism, it's not going and fixing, the friendships can be really surface. They really get to deeply connect. And there's times and places to quote unquote be negative, but it needs to be poured back out of you and then go into the positive. So in the season, you might need to go close your mouth. You might need to not go over and reflect that thought. You might not just need to automatically say what you think. And for people that are my personality style, the more outgoing style and the more dominant style, you tend to go first and then you think about it afterwards. We do have executive functioning. Encourage you to use this part of the brain. That's where it comes from. That's why our teenagers go over and say, I don't know, because they really don't know, because that's not fully developed yet. But we as cognitive adults go over and have that opportunity to use our reticulating activating sensor, which is in the back of the brain, and then also the executive function, which is in the front, to say, when I say something, is this impactful? What is it going to reflect on? So a little more ears and a little less mouth can go over and help you build those relationships better when you go think before you speak. Don't be, no, this one's different. So let me restate myself. I read it wrong. Be the initiator. A lot of people might not know you and you could be the coolest person ever, but it'd be more apt for you to be the initiator because they're in a groove now and you're not, especially when you get this new job. So going over and being the initiator initially, yes, relationships should be reciprocal, but it's our job to build our friendship. So be the initiator. Doesn't mean you have to hang out with every single person, but take that action to maybe as you're doing the look, listen, and feel the culture, you go over and see which person to initiate with, similar tendencies, humor, background, those types of things. And then that will be helpful for you, especially in the early stages of the game. Yes, if you're thinking military, you have the sponsor and they're the initiators, and we get taught how to go over and do the follow up and the mentorship. But as you're making this transformation from war hero to superhero, you definitely want to go over and learn to be the initiator in that regard. Again, learn your styles of people. If you haven't watched other episodes, is that person really sweet? Is that person really cautious? Is that person really inspiring? Is that person really dominant? Because the difference in response on how you initiate is drastically different compared to that. Because if you just initiate in yourself, you're only going to resonate with people that are like-minded like you. So you want to contextualize that initiation. All right, let's see. Another one. A lot of us nowadays, millennials, post-millennials, don't go over and do this. But if you really want to have those deeper connections and not just burn 100,000 hours and wishing you did, plan to connect via off-duty, but also coordinate this with your living room and bedroom ops. So to stay balanced. To go over and make those relationships, you got to have associations outside the workflow. You can connect sometimes in jobs, you can connect sometimes in processes, but if you really want to connect, you're going to have to do that planned wise in that regard. We know we're starting to walk back into the civilian world in a sense of COVID and everything else and whatnot, but try to go run those events that you go. There's a lot of opportunities that there's a lot of awesome people that you might meet. You might even find your future business partner or your future spouse if you're not already, married and watching this. So take those times to connect. It doesn't have to be all the time. And for more of my reserved people, that might be draining. But the thing is that you'll find that person that you truly need to go connect with in that particular regard. There's those opportunities when you have shared activities together, even if you talk about it after. It might be awkward when you did the event of the off-duty event at work if they coordinated, or maybe you coordinate your own or whatnot. But when you go out there, you can then share those scenarios and share that part. And it might not be an instant connection, but over time, it could be a connection. And you might find out there might be some hobbies and activities and places that you were never discovered if you didn't go what the business was offering off duty. So that's that one. The last one, and then I'm going to go into a bonus one if you're a boss and you are a leader in this regard, is be yourself overall. Some of the things, yes, it's learning, leadership, and contextualizing. And when I said about, look, listen, and feel about the environment. But overall, don't go over and change the core of yourself. These are behaviors. Like if someone's really loud, you go a little louder. You're visiting. You're not going over and changing yourself. You're just visiting to connect in the friendship. If the person's more reserved, you can be a little more reserved. But the thing of it is the overall, you need to go over and be yourself in there. And it takes time, especially for us military veterans and first responders. The reason why, and I've been out of active duty for a long time, so I'm a reservist. But it takes an average 3 to 6 years to make that transformation for most of us. So we need to not just go, hey, we're changing our job today, work from home, or hey, I'm going to change myself and go get school and go into this new environment, or hey, I'm going to go from corporate to entrepreneur, or entrepreneur to corporate, or whatever. Going to go into the next job and automatically jump in. We can scare a lot of people, especially of us as more dominant veterans and first responders and more dominant, you know, dominant veterans, first responders, military people. As we come out of the service, we can really intimidate if we go over and inspect everything to go super, super quick. Us veterans can connect a lot quicker because we have a lot more associations. We have a lot more of that relationship. We have that brotherhood. We have that sisterhood. But when coming in to the civilian world and making that transition, even sometimes government jobs, it takes time. So I want to encourage you for that to go over and to challenge on that. I will send the list on there and go give credit where credit's due. It's a fantastic website. I'm just not remembering it at the moment. And then our boss tips. So if you're a boss, you're a supervisor, you're growing in there, you're going to C-suite and those types of things. You're going into middle management, you're going to upper management, maybe like on our side with War Hero Superhero and Legrity, which is what empowers our message to the digital TV. I'm a co-founder. So that's huge. I'm like top game, top dog. And maybe you are top dog in your business, or top dog in your corporation. You've grown it really big. You want to be friendly with everybody to go over and grow the relationships, especially as you're starting a new, or maybe making that transition, or you're going to the next position. But strategically make those lateral relationships early, because there's a difference. We do it in the military, like, hey, fraternization and whatnot. Now, the civilian world doesn't have fraternization, but there's just relationships that are quote unquote frowned upon as you're growing up in leadership. So making that time to know what those people that are in leadership, like if you're a supervisor and the supervisors in other sections, if you're a C-suite leader and there's a bunch of people in the C-suite and whatnot. And it doesn't have to be in your business, especially as you get a boss. A real good book to read is From Bud to Boss, to make that transition, knowing on how to do that. Real great book. But make those transitions strategic and know you're going up to lateral of that promotion. There's going to be some moments that friends that you have, it might not go over and work out with. And then you want to give them that advice beforehand, saying, hey, it's great that we're friends and everything else, but now that I'm your boss, it's either keep it on the P's and Q's, or going over and maybe you need to make that transition, because that's going to help you grow in the long term. But make those strategic relationships. It might be in your section or outside your section. You need to make those strategic moves, or maybe you go over and connect with those types of people like on LinkedIn and you're doing network events and whatnot and different things. But be friendly to everyone. But as you grow, to go over and make those strategic relationships, so then you can go over and be friendly to all, but also keep that same approach as a supervisor, as a C-suite person, as a co-founder, and everything else, that you go over and be friendly to all, but strategically, because it can get lonely at the top. Fortunately for Legrity, we have 5 co-founders and we have become fast friends, but sometimes you might be the only one. So definitely you want to connect with those like-minded people so you can continue to build those relationships, so you can serve everyone, but you're still getting fed. We don't want you to be lonely. We don't want you to be depressed. We don't want you to be suicidal. So that is pretty much it. So thank you all for going over and watching. Again, this is always a conversation. Would love for you to go over and engage and see what your thoughts are on, hey, how do you make great uh, boardroom stories for your time while you're at work and making those transition. If you're making that transition, I would love to go over and hear what your thoughts are on as you're going over and making those connections and whatnot and everything else. Did these tips work? Did they not go over and work? So, and if you want more in-depth content, go connect with us on Legrity Media. You can go to legrity.tv to go over and connect there, and we'll be doing a hard launch soon, and we'll have more in-depth episodes. And you also can catch us on our other social media platforms to hear different perspectives from where we go over and deliver our content, because our goal is to help you thrive from the bedroom to the boardroom. So I'm going to go get out of my boardroom. Hope you guys enjoyed the non-banner day, and I'm going to go over and start getting out of here. You all have a good evening and keep that balance from the bedroom to the boardroom. Thanks.